started. For anyone who's joining, feel free to comment where you're calling from in the chat below. And remember that, this webinar will be recorded and we will share this with all of you right after the chat. So, if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to comment down below. My name is Michael and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Arist. And today we're going to be talking about transforming employee training via text. So we're Arist, and about 2 years ago, we invented the text message course as a way to train students in the conflict zone in Yemen. We then realized that text message courses were perfect for employee training. And today we're lucky to help dozens of companies, governments, and nonprofits create, launch, and assess text message courses of their own. Again, my name is Michael. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Arist, and today I'm joined by my two other co-founders, Maxine and Ryan. Arist is lucky to be used by some really incredible teams, everybody from the state of California to DuPont. And today our goal is to share both a little bit about what we do and also to share a lot of our research and learnings with text message courses over the past few years. So first, a little bit about why we do what we do. Learning leaders do absolutely incredible work. And we recognize that they need a medium that is well suited for scale. At the same time, learning and training can have a transformational effect on a company. And our goal is to give trainers the full visibility, control, agility, and attention that they need to deliver really, really meaningful learning outcomes. Today, we have over 500 people registered for this webinar, and already we have over 100 in attendance. And some key reasons why people mentioned they were attending today is, how to use text for training at scale, why text messages are effective, generally understanding how text message learning works, because for many of us, it's a brand new medium, and also how to get started. So we'll cover all of these over the course of the next, the next 45 minutes or so. And we're going to start off with discussing some common training difficulties that learning leaders often face, and some training difficulties that we've identified in our work with clients. After that, we're going to walk through the text message course model, explain some of the research behind it, and also some of the business impacts that it can have. We'll jump into common pitfalls that organizations face when deploying text message courses. Then we'll also walk through some common use cases. And we'll wrap up with some of our favorite tips for creating text message courses, and then some best practices on getting started. Throughout this webinar, we're going to have our friend Aristotle here on the right, giving us guidance. And one thing that we'll share is feel free to ask questions at any point in time in the chat below. And my colleagues, Maxine and Ryan, will be on hand to answer them. So with that in mind, let's get started. So first, let's touch on some common training difficulties. What we've learned over the past few years is that oftentimes learning organizations and training organizations have really, really incredible content, but limited delivery options. And oftentimes those limited delivery options cause some of the most persistent and pertinent problems in training. Video courses, for example, are often time intensive to build and difficult to update with new information. And we find that there's a lot of friction that current learning platforms have. Right, jumping into an LMS and clicking on a video and then watching an hour-long video oftentimes doesn't fit really seamlessly into the day-to-day lives of most learners. And that's one of the reasons why another major training difficulty that we face is that employees sometimes aren't taking or aren't finishing or aren't engaging enough with their coursework. This is both a function of limited time and access, right? Especially post-COVID, everybody is super busy. And so limited time and access ends up being a huge problem. But also to double click on the accessibility piece, what we find is that over 33 million American workers don't have access to the internet. And as a result, and the problem is magnified globally. And as a result, ensuring that the learning and training we create is as accessible as possible is absolutely critical. One thing that I'll touch on, very quickly is that a lot of current learning delivery platforms and a lot of current learning delivery mediums really don't fit in seamlessly into the lives of learners. And one of the things that we're obsessed with is how can we design learning and design learning mediums in a way that is human-centered. This is especially, becoming an issue because video fatigue is very real. Employees are recording sky-high rates of video fatigue, and that's in large part because we're doing everything by video, and switching up mediums is pretty critical. As a result, the friction that exists in current learning mediums often leads to limited executive buy-in, which we hear is often one of the toughest problems that training leaders have to deal with. And that's also in large part because it's sometimes hard to show rapid and immediate impact from learning. And so what we're going to talk about today is how text messages can be used both to reduce friction, but also to showcase very, very meaningful immediate impact. So with that in mind, the big question that we're going to be addressing today is how can we reduce friction in learning? And text messages are particularly well suited to reducing friction. First off, they're incredibly effective. 95% of employees will open a text within 3 minutes of receiving it. And as a result, response and engagement rates are 10 times higher than other learning mediums. As well, bite-sized content meets employees where they are. Everybody's on their phones all the time. I'm guilty of it. And as a result, if we can deliver bite-sized content via text, we can meet employees where they are and make the learning process completely frictionless for them. Beyond that, text messages have a proven track record of meaningful outcomes, both in learning and outside learning. And we'll jump into some of the research, especially one piece of research from Stanford specifically in just a moment. But we've seen text messages be used really, really effectively for everything from behavior change to knowledge retention in the past. Most importantly for us, text messages are highly scalable. You can instantly reach thousands of people directly in just a few clicks, even those without laptop or LMS access. Over 5 billion people can currently text, and 2 billion people use WhatsApp. And the last thing that we'll share before we jump into how this informs our course model is that texts are really, really fast to create. We write them all the time, and they enable us to build courses in just a few hours versus sometimes days or weeks for video courses. And the really great thing is that in a text, you can send emojis, responses, GIFs, and a lot more engaging content. And we'll jump into later in the webinar about how we track responses, course progress, and engagement on our end as well. So with that in mind, we've spent the past 2 years fine-tuning our course model with all of these benefits in mind. And what we ended up coming up with, and this is one of the studies, by the way, that informed our research, which indicates, this study done by Stanford in 2014 indicates that texts are one of the best ways to shift behavior. We realized that we needed a model that leverages text for frictionlessness, immediacy, and behavior change, uses spaced learning and spaced repetition to improve knowledge retention, and is also bite-sized and interactive and personal, and ensures digestibility and access. So with that in mind, this is what the Arist course model looks like. And this is currently the leading course model for text message-based learning. So most courses consist of an image or a GIF. This can be an infographic, a chart, or just an engaging GIF, followed by a 1,200 character concept or case study explanation. So 1,200 characters is enough to walk through a concept or case study in depth and is about 2 screen lengths worth of content. Beyond that, we have a series of interactive questions that can be multiple choice questions, open-ended questions, or short answer questions. And learners can text back, and it's that easy to sort of engage with the course content and answer those questions. A typical Arist course is sent every single day over the course of anywhere from 5 to 30 days. In 5 to 10 days, we can cover, a quick onboarding course. And in 10 to 30 days, we can cover more substantive course content. And we've seen, courses deployed on everything from anti-racism training to safety and compliance, even courses on neuroscience and blockchain. So let's jump into the research behind text message courses a little bit more in depth. So the first aspect of our course model that is really, really critical is the spaced learning and daily action piece, right? Employees will forget a majority of what they learn 24 hours after a single instance training or in-person training. And so that means that, knowledge retention is one of the most important things that a course model can generate. In large part because, if employees forget course content, that severely limits their ability to actualize that learning in the workplace. By spacing out texts and adding in daily actions, right? Daily actions including everything from multiple choice questions to reflection questions, in some cases, literal things that people have to do once they receive a text. We can help learners remember over 90% of the content after 10 days of repetition. Another really, really important part of our learning platform is microlearning. And this is a really, really critical reason why text messages are really, really effective, right? Attention spans are becoming shorter and shorter. Again, I'm guilty of that as well. And what we found and what GoOne's 2020 State of Learning report found is that 83% of learners actually prefer content engagements that are less than 50 minutes long. And over 40% prefer bite-sized learning engagements. As Gen Z becomes more and more prevalent in the workplace, this percentage is only going to increase. And already we've seen the rise of platforms like TikTok and Twitter that have really, really successfully leveraged micro learning or a micro medium for learning. The last piece that makes our course model effective, and this is a thing that we are continuously obsessed with, is frictionlessness. Right, 95% of people open a text within 3 minutes of receiving it, and so by using SMS and WhatsApp, which are immediate and used all the time, we see engagement and response rates oftentimes several times higher than other learning mediums, and completion rates are incredibly high as a result as well. And that's in large part because courses meet learners where they are. Right, courses meet learners where they are, which is usually on their phones. What we find as well, and this is not news to anybody who's been in learning and training for a while, but better learning and training outcomes result in powerful business outcomes. And some of the direct business impacts we've seen from text message learning include everything from cost and time savings to better knowledge transfer. And we'll get into knowledge transfer in a second, but our research indicates that a typical 500-person company will lose over $100,000 per year due to training that's too long or ineffective. With Arist, we can condense 20 to 30 minutes worth of in-classroom training on average into one text or one course a day, resulting in time savings of up to 75% for your employees. Simultaneously, Arist courses are also far cheaper and far faster to build versus video courses. And we often see our clients cut the cost of creating course content by up to 90%. One thing that I'll add here is that our team can also always help with creating course content. And we'll jump into some of the, the ways that we can help a little bit later down the line. Another really important part of the business impact that text message courses can have is higher adoption and satisfaction rates. Employees loving training is a really critical corollary to the training being effective. And our goal is to make training as delightful as possible by making it as frictionless and easy as possible. One way that we like to think about text message courses is that they're a direct line to your employees, right? Imagine being able to text your employees directly and be the first thing that they see every single morning. And that's one of the reasons why text message courses are so powerful and also get such high adoption rates within organizations. The last thing that I'll share in terms of business impact is better knowledge transfer. So what we find is that a lot of our clients oftentimes will have experts, subject matter experts within the organization that are retiring or are moving on from the company and don't have an easy way to share their knowledge. And sharing knowledge within an organization is critical for the organization to be successful and productive. And so with text message courses, knowledge sharing within an organization can be as easy as writing a text. Right, so someone who is retiring from an organization can sit down, write a series of text messages, and work with a learning designer to make them really, really effective. And that way, documenting and sharing knowledge is as easy as writing and sharing a text. So at this point, we're going to jump into 2 real-life case studies of how text message learning has made an impact for a few organizations that we work with. And what we've also done is we've taken 2 bonus examples. So we've actually picked 2 attendees at random from our webinar today and made courses for them. So let's jump in. And a few things to keep in mind before we jump into the case studies. First, text message courses are really, really good for certain things and really, really not good for certain things. And understanding, whether or not the subject that you're trying to teach is a good fit for text message learning is a really, really critical component of the success of your course. In particular, text message courses are great for behavior change, knowledge retention, supplementation, and large-scale trainings. But they're really, really not good for collaborative learning, right? So any situation where employees are collaborating on a learning project, highly personalized learning journeys. So situations where, we're personalizing learning to each individual. Because Arist is really a one-to-many learning platform, or in-depth technical training, right? Arist is really, really not good for teaching you how to fly a plane or teaching you how to operate heavy machinery, but it is great for reinforcing that knowledge. One rule of thumb that we like to think about is, can a course or can a topic that you want to teach be broken down into a series of easily digestible concepts and case studies? And if it can, then it's perfect for text message learning. Also, before we jump into the use cases, just some of our favorite case studies that we want to touch on. Before Arist started, and before we developed the course model, we were just deploying courses to students in the conflict zone in Yemen. And we never would have thought that, this text message learning model that we created would have use cases that are so diverse and so impactful. We've seen organizations use text message courses from everything from safety and compliance training to customer training. And one thing that I want you all to keep in mind as we're going through these case studies is, what will you create, right? What text message course will you want to create after we finish this webinar today? And feel free to share that in the chat as well. We'd love to learn what you're thinking about creating. So with that in mind, let's jump into our first case study. So DuPont is one of the world's largest training organizations with locations globally. And DuPont, in particular DuPont Sustainable Solutions, when COVID hit, they needed to figure out a way to create remote-friendly safety training content to get both their employees and also their clients' employees back to work safely. The challenge that they faced was that their employees and their clients' employees were distributed all over the world with varying levels of LMS and internet access. So with Arist, DuPont was able to rapidly create safety training courses for employees that were delivered entirely via text. And those courses so far have had course completion rates of 90% and answer accuracy rates of over 90%. Nancy Condis, who is the text message pioneer at DuPont, mentioned that people found text message courses unbelievably easy to use and easy to deploy. And one of the really, really cool things that DuPont was able to do was very, very quickly copy and differentiate their courses and target them to different groups of employees. So they were able to take one course, copy it, and instantly adjust it to managers or instantly adjust it to a separate group of employees. And they were also able to rapidly translate their courses into a variety of different languages. DuPont is actually making these courses publicly accessible. And so you can actually get this course for your team by following this link. Let's jump into our second case study, which is DoorDash. So Saya, who's a text message learning pioneer, recognized the need for rapid, actionable, and really, really effective anti-racism training in a time of crisis this summer. And the challenges that she faced was that during COVID, in-person training is nearly impossible. And simultaneously, video-based training is often very, very time-intensive and not action-oriented. And with anti-racism training, as with lots of trainings, action and behavior change is absolutely critical. And a lot of existing video-based platforms simply weren't able to demonstrate that level of behavior change for Saya. Another issue that Saya faced was that the training needed to be developed immediately. This course content needed to be made yesterday. And she also needed to rapidly and clearly track behavior change outcomes for the course. So using Arist, Saya was able to create an actionable anti-racism training via text. She was able to build it in under 3 days, and the course to date has 90% completion and satisfaction rates. Saya mentioned in particular that the course was one of the first times that people recognized that their behavior wasn't conducive to an anti-racist workplace. And Saya actually, from the 1,000+ people that took the course, Saya got tons and tons of feedback that this was the first time that people felt like their behavior was actually changing. The last case study that I'll share before we jump into a few of the case studies that we've picked from our attendees today is the state of California. So the state of California, and particularly Lisos, California, was running a statewide preparedness campaign sponsored by Governor Newsom. And the challenge that they face and still face is that in-person training is impossible during COVID. And video-based training can often be ineffective for disaster preparedness. At the same time, they have a really, really large audience, a very large remote audience across the state that often has limited internet access and has a variety of language needs as well. With Arist, the state of California was able to rapidly create a 7-day disaster preparedness training entirely via text that was deployed in over 6 languages. And it was built just in time for wildfire season as well. Karen Baker, the co-chair of Lisos California, mentioned that text message courses can help them ensure equity and even save lives. To try out the course, you can just text Lisos CA to 72345 and instantly try out text message-based training from California. Now let's jump into some courses that we've made for our audience today. So we have a few learning leaders from Whole Foods in the audience. So welcome, and we're super happy to have you here. And what we wanted to think about was, what would happen if Whole Foods' values and onboarding training took place via text? So we were able to take a few of Whole Foods' core values and core principles and turn them into a really, really seamless 10-day text message course that one day at a time walks learners and employees through the core values of Whole Foods. So the key benefit of this course is that along with being really, really accessible, it's also really impactful. And in those really, really key first 2 weeks before an employee starts or when an employee starts, we can ensure that employees are reminded why they're working for Whole Foods and what the core values are. And it can be delivered, as part of their first 2 weeks before starting or even as a recruitment tool. Another example that we found really interesting was First Republic Bank. We have a number of learning leaders from First Republic joining us today, so great to see you all as well. And First Republic is known for client excellence. They're known for treating their clients extremely well. And in large part, that's because their managers are trained very, very well to treat their clients fantastic. And so, we started to imagine what it would be like if we could reinforce First Republic's manager training via text to ensure that managers, even after they've taken their training, are constantly reminded how to actualize and take action on client excellence in the workplace. And the great thing about reinforcement courses via text is that they can be delivered in the week or two after a long session takes place, or they can be delivered months after as a refresher. And again, the key benefit here is that managers are given support, performance support, and also are given reminders to act on key principles that they've learned in the past. With that in mind, let's jump into how you can create amazing text message learning experiences. Over the past 2 years, we've made hundreds of text message courses and have helped our clients make hundreds of text message courses. And we've also seen a lot of pitfalls and a lot of best practices come sort of rise to the top. So with that in mind, let's jump into our first tip. So first, when designing a text message course, as with any course, it is critical to know your objective. And the 3 key questions that we ask ourselves when designing courses is, who do I want to teach and what do I want to teach them? What does success look like, right? Is it behavior change? Is it knowledge retention? And based on that, how do you know that you've been successful? And what questions and what actions we need learners to respond to within the text to generate those success outcomes near the end of the text. A lot of our courses follow a know, understand, act, and reflect model. And we recommend thinking through that model as well when designing courses. And we in the Arist course builder, which we'll jump into later in this conversation, we'll walk through a few of the writing guides that we have to help you build out your first course. The second tip that we have, and this is absolutely critical, is being personable and brief. Text message courses work best when they're coming from a friend or when they sound like they're coming from a friend. And so we've seen organizations use emojis and GIFs even for topics that are oftentimes a little bit more serious, to make courses sound very, very personable and meaningful. We also recommend linking to outside resources, but doing so sparingly. The best courses include resources that are highly curated and delivered just once every 2 or 3 days. The last thing that we'll share is that it's really, really important to be brief and to the point, and counting every letter is critical. With text message courses, you only have 1,200 characters to explain a concept or case study. And so you have to make each one count. Another tip that we think is pretty critical is outlining. So this was actually one of the first courses that we developed at Arist. It was our public speaking course. And we wanted to see if we could teach public speaking over text, because that was initially a lot of the questions that we got was, well, what are the limitations of the text message learning medium? And so Ryan, one of our co-founders, previously had experience as a public speaking trainer, and was able to break down the core concepts of public speaking into a series of topics, with meaningful insights and meaningful actions attached to each one. And so outlining ends up being a really great way to really ensure that your course is properly structured, and generates some sort of meaningful learning outcome. So with that in mind, once you've built your course, we recommend asking yourself 3 questions. 1, does this grab your attention? 2, would you read the whole text? And 3, are you likely to respond once you read the whole text? This is one of our first courses that we deployed. And there are a number of things here that reduce both engagement, but also, the satisfaction levels of courses. First, this course doesn't have a lot of interaction. It has no emojis, and it has limited engagement with the learner. and also really doesn't have a GIF as well, or an image to bring the learner in. And so, since then we've evolved our course model significantly. This course is one of our latest and most popular courses. And as you can tell, it has, tons of interactivity, both open-ended questions and multiple choice questions, selected links to resources, emojis and GIFs. And this way we're able to really draw the learner in and make the course as engaging as possible. And the best part is it sounds like you're having a conversation with a friend. So with that in mind, let's jump into a quick tour of the Arist platform. And what we'll do is we'll just do a quick, a 3 or 4 minute tour. And then we'll jump into some of the questions that we often get asked about text message learning. So this is the Arist dashboard. This is the home base for creating and launching text message course content. And here we have our writing guide, which is the home base for all of our best practices, examples, and everything else to get you started designing your first course. Let's jump into the course builder here. So essentially what we've done is we've divided the platform into course creation, user enrollment, analytics and integrations with LMS and HRS systems. And then down here we have sort of our admin lists where we can invite writers from our organization to write courses. And then also settings where we can fully white label the experience and add in our own logo and name. So let's jump into one of my favorite courses, which is this DEI for Startups course developed by the former CEO of Reddit, Ellen Pao. After leaving Reddit, Ellen recognized that there was a really strong need for better diversity and inclusion training at startups. And she recognized that text messages were one of the best ways to reach startup employees who are often busy or overwhelmed. So building out a course is as easy as writing a text. We can plug in our course details here, plug in the logo for the course here, an activation message if we'd like. In this case, we're just introducing the authors. And then every single day is a distinct concept or case study. So let's jump into day 5, which tackles the pipeline problem. So here we have an infographic that walks through what the pipeline problem is, the subject for the day, and then a brief 1,200 character concept or case study explanation that in this case walks through both what the pipeline problem is, presents some statistics about it, and also shares a few case studies that are relevant. From there, we have a series of questions. So in this case, we have a multiple choice survey that learners have to text back to. And that's followed up by an open-ended question, another multiple choice question with a custom response built in. So custom responses are one of the most powerful aspects of the Arist platform. And essentially, here we can give learners different types of follow-up content based on what they've responded. So once we've built out the course, we can go up here and preview what it looks like for the learner. And essentially, learners once a day at the time that they select will get an image, a 1,200 character concept or case study explanation, and they're good for and then a few questions, and then they're good for the day. So with that in mind, let's jump into user enrollment, which is the next step after you've published a course. So we've broken user enrollment up into 3 parts. One is the Arist homepage. So essentially, every organization gets a dedicated white labeled Arist classroom that can seamlessly integrate with your LMS if needed. And in the Arist classroom, we can add access codes, allow users to enroll without plugging in their email address with just a phone number. We can set prices for courses if we'd like. And we can also make courses accessible through a share link only and make them private. And so the Arist classroom looks something like this. Essentially, from here, users will be able to click on a course, pick their preferred messaging platform, pick their time, and they're good to go. And just like that, in a few seconds, they've signed up for a course. Another way that learners can enroll is through embeds. So we can actually seamlessly embed the Arist course sign-up form into any website. And one of my favorite examples of that is the Pointer Institute, which embedded their misinformation text message course on their website, and learners can sign up in just one click. The last example that I'll share is bulk enroll. And so here we can directly pull phone numbers from your HRS system, or you can bulk upload employee phone numbers securely and instantly assign them to a course. Learners will get a text telling them that they've been enrolled in a course, and they can just text back start to instantly complete it. We also offer in-platform very, very robust analytics. So everything from completion to response and answer accuracy rates. And we can also view enrollment in the classroom over time. And we can view this for each course as well, along with viewing detailed user progress and response data on an individual level. So with that in mind, let's walk through some of the key questions that we often get about text message learning. So one of the most common questions we get is, are text messages and text message courses particularly well suited for certain age groups? And our research, over the past 2 years indicates that there's no substantive difference between satisfaction rates for text message courses between different age groups. And in fact, one of the things that we realize is that, even for older audiences, text messages are often a much more comfortable medium for interaction than a lot of LMS platforms. And so one of my favorite quotes from a pilot that we did was, we had a 65-year-old woman who said that she just absolutely loved learning on the subway. And that Arist was sort of her favorite learning medium as a result. As a result, text message courses are also a really, really good way to future-proof your organization, both because they're really effective for Gen Z and for all age groups, and also because they allow your organization to make learning really, really agile and create and launch courses as soon as needed. One of the biggest questions we get is, can I text my employees on their personal device? And will my organization's limitations for texting employees on their personal devices prevent me from using, text message learning at my company? And so the answer is that with Arist, we've developed this secure and seamless opt-in process that allows learners to learn on their personal devices and allows you to text employees on their personal devices. We do this in a number of ways, both through our terms and conditions, where learners opt in to receiving course content on their personal phones, and also because we have a lot of security sort of procedures in place to firewall employee phone numbers and encrypt them to ensure that everything is as safe as possible. We can also securely integrate with your LMS and HRIS system to ensure that information transfer is seamless, and learners can always securely plug in their own phone number via the Arist classroom. And as a result, we're able to find that, at most organizations and even at governments and nonprofits that have very, very strong security procedures in place, we're almost always able to help organizations train their employees on their personal phones. And employees love it too. We actually never had an employee opt out of receiving a text message course. And that's, the convenience of being able to learn on your personal phone is one of the reasons that we have 90+% adoption rates for text message courses at most organizations. Related to that, a common question that we get is about hourly workers. And for hourly workers to comply with shift scheduling and everything else, we can actually schedule text message courses to specific shift times. So learners, for example, can get a text when their shift starts on their 5-minute training break, for example, or near the end of their shift. And that way, learners aren't learning off the clock, and learners can still receive courses on their personal devices. Because we integrate with both WhatsApp and SMS, and we'll be integrating with email, Slack, and Microsoft Teams soon, we ensure that cost is never an issue and never a barrier to employees taking courses on their personal devices. One other thing that we'd like to point out here is that, with hourly workers, although we've seen Arist used for mandatory training, oftentimes a really, really good way, a really good use case for Arist for hourly workers is supplemental training. Because what we find is that many hourly workers love the ability to learn other subjects while they're on the subway home or when they have a quick break at home. And Arist is perfect for that. So to recap, we've had a really, really dense and really exciting, 30 or 40 minutes here. And before we jump into questions, just to recap, text message-based training is, first off, really research-backed and very effective, but also is connected to meaningful learning outcomes. I think most importantly, text message-based learning is highly scalable, which is critical for large organizations and the modern learner, and also is really, really fast to create, which has never been more important as our world is changing super, super quickly. The last thing that I'll share before we wrap up is that employees at all levels love learning via text. And that's, again, one of the reasons why we've seen really, really rapid adoption of text message learning in workforces. For getting started, there's a number of ways to get started with both Arist and text message learning. We encourage everybody to try out making a free course. And if you have under 500 learners, you can get started with our growth plan on a 2-week free trial immediately. And so just by following this link, lrn.sc/kickoff, you can jump into the Arist platform, instantly create your own classroom, and get started exploring how you can use text message courses at your organization. For organizations with over 500 learners, we can help you get set up on one of our enterprise plans, which can include content support as well. And we also have some limited availability for our flagship pilot program, which is a full service way to get started with Eris. And we can start with just a 30-minute meeting. And with the flagship pilot program, we will actually create your first course for you, pilot it for you, put together a detailed report and implementation plan, and we'll also put together a learning workshop and a learning design workshop for your entire team. So if you're interested in either the flagship pilot or in using Arist immediately, just follow the link lrn.sc/kickoff to get started. So thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to jump into questions now, but I just want to thank you all for taking an hour out of your day on a Tuesday to learn about text message courses. We've been working on this for over 2 years, and we firmly believe that text messages have the potential to really, really meaningfully transform learning and training. And we're so grateful to be on this journey with you all. Again, feel free to get started by going to this link or by trying a course at courses.arist.co. So with that in mind, let's jump into some questions. I'm going to open up the chat here in just a moment. Awesome. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, and then I'm happy to answer them as. Yeah, sure thing. So the growth plan is $9.99 a month for up to 500 learners. And we also have both nonprofit discounts in place and also annual discounts in place. Our goal is to make sure that courses and our platform is accessible to anyone. So feel free to book time with our team if you have questions about pricing or if we can help in any other way. Yeah, and yeah, for organizations who want to create open access courses, we can also we also have usage-based pricing models where essentially you pay a flat monthly fee and then just pay a few dollars, and it goes down to about 75 cents to $1 every single time someone takes a course. So feel free to schedule time with us or shoot us an email, and we're happy to walk through those models for your specific use case. Yeah, the Arist platform comes standard with a 2-week free trial. So feel free to jump in and get started. And there is no setup fee. Unless you're doing a complex LMS or HRS integration, you can get started with Arist right off the bat. Yeah, for exploring Arist and for using, for kicking off and trying a course, we recommend using, Firefox or Chrome. We find that Arist doesn't usually work super well on Internet Explorer. And then in terms of, we mean $999 a month. Sorry about that. Yes, yeah, we do often work with consultants to offer this to their clients. And feel free to reach out to us about our consultant plans as well. And yeah, visual learners love text message courses as much as anybody else, in large part because we can include emojis and GIFs and images on a regular basis that engage them. And GIFs are animated oftentimes. And what we found is that across the board, depending on whether or not somebody is a visual or auditory learner, people really, really enjoy text message courses. One thing that we're actually going to be launching within the next few months is the ability to integrate short audio and video formats directly in text and send that as part of a text message course. So we can keep you all posted about that as well. Yeah, in terms of accessibility, and in terms, one of the great things about text message courses is every single phone has tons of accessibility options built in. And so we've seen Arist clients oftentimes have their phone read their daily texts aloud to them. For example, if they have visual impairments. And so there's a lot of other accessibility options that we can talk about more in depth. Awesome. All right. Feel free to put any other questions in the chat. We're going to stick around and answer them. And again, I want to thank you all for taking the time to be with us here today. And we're just so thrilled that we have people joining from all over the world as well. And I'm including my personal email in the chat here as well. Somebody asked about comparisons to Kahoot. And what we find is that, text message courses are far more immediate than a lot of our other learning platforms because we reach employees directly on their phones. What we find is even the friction of having to log on to another learning platform oftentimes creates some sort of friction. Yeah, in terms of LMS integration, so what we can do is Arist courses can show up as a course object in your LMS, and using SSO, users can sign up for courses instantly without even needing to jump into the Arist platform. And we can actually feed back all of the user data and response data back into your LMS. And feel free to contact us about how that works for your specific situation as well. In terms of using the product program to gain new business, we've seen text message courses used as a lead generation tool. So oftentimes organizations will create a customer education course on Arist. And then if somebody wants to learn more, instead of downloading a white paper or reading an ebook, they can just sign up for a text message course and get a series of daily interactions with you and your product, which we found to be a really meaningful supplement or replacement for customer education tools. Yep, we'll make sure to record this webinar and share it with all of your teams. And yes, we have done courses with salespeople. Actually, quite a number of our clients are sales training teams globally. Awesome. And again, thank you all for joining. We're super excited to have you all here.